under which I could be charged, tried, and convicted of blasphemous libel for blogging about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists. And that circumstance is if Unitarian Universalists hold such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, at least when committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers, to be sacred and holy. You can go, sir, it's fine, you can just walk across that. Anyhow, this guy's curious about the church and going in. In any case, so that's kind of quite an interesting day where somebody from the Naqshbandi Sufi order comes by as I'm protesting. And I'm able to explain a few things to him. But anyway, yes, there's one circumstance only that I'm aware of, whereby the Unitarian Universalist Association's blasphemous libel accusation against me could possibly have any validity whatsoever, and that circumstance is if Unitarian Universalists hold such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape to be sacred and holy to Unitarian Universalism, at least when those despicable crimes are committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers or Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teachers or Unitarian Universalist lay leaders. So yeah, well done, Unitarian Universalist Association. You really, you really raised the bar there, didn't you? And I quite enjoyed sending an email about that to Maître Marc-André Coulombe not so long ago. I held that little nugget of information in reserve for quite some time. I mean, I knew about it years before I sent an email to Maître Marc-André Coulombe asking him if Unitarian Universalists hold pedophilia and rape to be sacred. So that was a fun email to write and send to Maître Marc-André Coulombe. Oh, speaking of emails that I sent to Maître Marc-André Coulombe, I sent one on Friday the 13th of May 2016, and I posted it to the Emerson Avenger blog. And that email was about the fact that Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, also known as Peace Bang, seems to be under the impression that I have to comply with the demands made in Maître Marc-André Coulombe's ridiculous cease and desist demand letters. Reverend Victoria Weinstein is either completely mistaken out of sheer ignorance, or it's possible she knows perfectly well that I actually have no legal obligation to comply, and that she's just lying. But the fact of the matter is recently on her Twitter account, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein has tweeted that I'm subject to restraining orders or cease and desist orders and so on. That's the term she uses. Well, a cease and desist demand letter is not a cease and desist order. A cease and desist demand letter is essentially a warning or a threat of legal action. You know, the cease and desist demand letter, regardless of what, you know, issue it addresses, regardless of what it asks you to cease and desist from, or regardless of what, you know, crimes or civil tort it accuses you of, that's all it is. It's an accusation. It's just a legal accusation made by a lawyer, and it has no legal validity in the sense of, you know, you have to comply with it. You can say, no, you're full of shit, take me to court. And that's essentially what I did with Maître Marc-André Coulombe. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not guilty of any of this stuff in your cease and desist demand letter as far as I'm concerned. If you think I'm guilty of blasphemous libel or sexual harassment of Reverend Weinstein for criticizing her sadistic sodomy fantasy, well, let's go to court. Let's discuss it in front of a judge or even a judge and jury. I'm all for that. I think I'm innocent, and I'm very certain I'm innocent. And I'm innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So you really believe I'm guilty of the criminal act of blasphemous libel? If you really believe I'm guilty of sexual harassment of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein for criticizing her own threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment against Republican State Senator Bill Napoli, well, be my guest. Let's go to court. Let's see what a judge, or even better, a judge and jury thinks of your ludicrous accusations against me. If you can even get it to court. Because, the accusations were so ludicrous, so laughable, that, like literally laughable. I remember I was about halfway through reading the first cease and desist demand letter when I first opened my email inbox, and I burst out laughing. It was so ludicrous that I literally burst out laughing. And honestly, I believe that if Maitre Marc-André Coulombe and the Unitarian Universalist Association, went to the SPVM police force and or Quebec Crown prosecutors and tried to persuade them to have me arrested and charged with blasphemous libel or sexual harassment of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein for criticizing her own sexual harassment of Senator Bill Napoli. I think they literally, in some cases, they would be laughed at. I'm not saying every police officer would burst out laughing. I'm not saying every Crown prosecutor would burst out laughing, but I think some of them would. I think some of the more experienced and professional, well, actually, the more professional ones might not burst out laughing. They might know better than to burst out laughing. But basically, Crown prosecutors who really know their job and are maybe a little bit cynical, I think a few of them anyway would just literally laugh at the Unitarian Universalist Association for trying to have me charged with blasphemous libel for blogging about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists. And by the same token, I think they would at least snicker, at least sort of under their breath snicker at Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein via the UUA's Canadian attorney, Stikeman Elliott, barristers and solicitors, litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-André Coulombe, accusing me of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of her for blogging about what can be properly described as her own threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of Republican State Senator Bill Napoli. Now, I suppose you might be wondering just what might constitute Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of Bill Napoli. So I won't keep you in suspense. I'm about to tell you the exact words, or very, very close to the exact words, of the sodomy fantasy that Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein posted to her Peace Bang blog. Here goes. Here's my sodomy fantasy. South Dakota State Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch. So, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein is accusing me of sexually harassing her for criticizing that obscene and sadistic sodomy fantasy. And she is specifically, as I've already said, her lawyer, or the UUA's lawyer on her behalf, is accusing me of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, where I think most Canadians, most Americans, pretty much most reasonably well-informed, intelligent people in the world would agree that, well, actually, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy, imagining South Dakota State Senator anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch, is perhaps more reasonably described as threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment. So that's part of the UU clergy sex abuse that the Unitarian Universalist Association is trying to cover up. You know, when I first complained about Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy and other insults and abuse that she posted to the internet, I did not characterize it as sexual abuse. I characterized it as conduct unbecoming a minister. But the fact of the matter is, you know, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy is essentially a rape fantasy. She's imagining a Republican state senator, you know, having the Statue of Liberty's torch rammed up his ass. That's what it comes down to. Or being lowered onto the Statue of Liberty's torch on his ass, you know. That's what her sodomy fantasy says. That's moderately threatening, to say the least. I'd say somewhat defamatory. And yeah, I think we can say, yeah, it's kind of verbal sexual harassment. In fact, it's a higher level of verbal sexual harassment than other Unitarian Universalist ministers have actually been disciplined for in terms of things they've said to their congregants. In other words, some Unitarian Universalist ministers have made less serious sexualized comments to their parishioners and have in fact, you know, been found to have sexually harassed them, committed a, you know, verbal clergy sexual misconduct. Meanwhile, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein posts a obscene and sadistic sodomy fantasy to her blog, and the Unitarian Universalist Association, its very aptly named Ministerial Fellowship Committee, pretty much, you know, anyone who has anything to do with dealing with clergy misconduct at the UUA pretended that Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's sodomy fantasy was outside of her role as a minister. In other words, it had nothing to do with her as a minister. It's like, it's a separate issue. It's got nothing to do with her competence as a minister. That's the ruling that they made, which I think is a mistaken one. And now they're accusing me of sexually harassing her for commenting on and criticizing her sexual harassment. A little bit of a double standard there.